The cold metal of the gun pressed against Ruby's temple, and her breath caught in her throat. One wrong move and it would all be over. The man holding her captive sneered, tightening his grip on her arm. "Your husband isn't coming for you. The great Dominic Rossi doesn't care about some maid he married for show." Time slowed as Ruby heard the sound of multiple car engines outside. Heavy footsteps approached the warehouse door. Then a voice, his voice, cut through the darkness like a blade. "Take your hands off my wife, or the last thing you'll see is me pulling the trigger. If you want to discover how Ruby ended up married to the most dangerous man in the city and what happens after this moment, subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one." Ruby Foster stared at the imposing mansion through the bus window, clutching her worn backpack to her chest. The gleaming white structure loomed ahead, a stark contrast to the small apartment she could no longer afford. 3 job rejections that morning, rent due in 2 days, and only $27 left in her bank account. This housekeeping interview was her last hope. "Final stop Westlake Hills," the bus driver announced. Ruby stepped off the bus, the warm spring air doing little to calm her nerves. Her sensible shoes crunched on the immaculate gravel driveway as she approached the wrought iron gates. A security camera swiveled toward her. "Name?" a disembodied voice asked through the intercom. "Ruby Foster. I have an interview with Mrs. Hayes for the housekeeping position." The gates opened silently, and Ruby walked the long path to the front door, taking in the perfectly manicured lawn and marble fountains. Everything about this place screamed money, old money, the kind of wealth that made her second-hand dress and scuffed shoes feel even shabbier. An older woman with a stern face opened the door before Ruby could knock. "Mrs. Hayes?" "Yes. You're right on time, Miss Foster. Come in." The woman stepped aside. "I'm the head housekeeper. The position is for the East Wing. It's currently unoccupied, but the owner wants it maintained. You'll be responsible for cleaning, dusting, and ensuring everything remains in perfect order." Ruby nodded, following Mrs. Hayes through the grand foyer. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, and priceless art adorned the walls. "The pay is as discussed over the phone. Room and board are included if you wish to live on premises." Ruby's heart leapt. A place to stay would solve her immediate housing crisis. "That would be very helpful," she said, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. Mrs. Hayes led her to an enormous kitchen, where several staff members were preparing what appeared to be dinner. "Wait here while I get the paperwork," Mrs. Hayes instructed, leaving Ruby standing awkwardly near the kitchen island. A young chef smiled at her. "New hire?" "Hopefully," Ruby replied. "I'm interviewing for the East Wing position." The chef's smile faltered. "The East Wing? That's Mr. Rossi's private residence." Mrs. Hayes said it was unoccupied. "It usually is, but—" The kitchen fell silent. Ruby turned to see what had caused the sudden hush and found herself staring at the most intimidating man she had ever seen. He stood in the doorway, tall and imposing in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His presence dominated the room, dark eyes surveying his domain with cool authority. His jawline was sharp, his features aristocratic, and a hint of a 5 o'clock shadow only emphasized his rugged handsomeness. When his gaze landed on Ruby, she felt her breath catch. "Mr. Rossi," the chef stammered. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "Plans changed," the man replied, his deep voice sending a shiver down Ruby's spine. His attention remained fixed on her. "And who is this?" Ruby straightened her shoulders, refusing to be intimidated despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. "Ruby Foster. I'm interviewing for the housekeeping position." His dark eyes narrowed slightly. "For the East Wing." It wasn't a question, but Ruby nodded anyway. Dominic Rossi approached her slowly, like a predator sizing up its prey. He circled Ruby once, his gaze assessing. She fought the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. "Mrs. Hayes didn't mention I was returning early?" "No, sir," Ruby said, mentally cursing her bad luck. To her surprise, a small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "No matter. I still need a housekeeper." Mrs. Hayes hurried back into the kitchen, nearly dropping the papers in her hand when she saw her employer. "Mr. Rossi, I didn't expect you until tomorrow." "Yes, so I've heard." He turned to the flustered housekeeper. "Miss Foster and I were just getting acquainted." The look he gave the room cleared it instantly. Even Mrs. Hayes retreated, leaving Ruby alone with him. Her palms began to sweat. "Follow me," he commanded, turning on his heel. Ruby hesitated for only a moment, before following him through the house to an elegant study. He sat behind a massive desk and gestured for her to take the seat opposite him. "Your resume," he said, holding out his hand. Ruby dug into her backpack and produced the single page that summarized her 6 years of cleaning experience. He scanned it quickly. "No formal education beyond high school?" "No, sir." "3 previous housekeeping positions?" "Yes, sir." "All short-term?" Ruby swallowed. "I've been trying to save for nursing school. I take jobs that pay well, even if they're temporary." He set down the resume and leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "And what makes you think you're qualified to maintain my private residence?" "I'm thorough, discreet, and I take pride in my work," Ruby answered honestly. "I respect privacy and understand the importance of confidentiality." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, perhaps? "Good answer." He stood suddenly and walked to the window, his back to her. "The position has changed slightly from what was advertised." Ruby's heart sank. Here it came. The catch. "I need someone who can start immediately, today. The job will require flexibility with hours and duties. There will be additional responsibilities beyond standard housekeeping." "What kind of additional responsibilities?" Ruby asked cautiously. He turned to face her, expression unreadable. "I have a 5-year-old daughter." This revelation surprised Ruby. Nothing about this cold, imposing man suggested fatherhood. "Her nanny quit without notice yesterday. While I search for a permanent replacement, I need someone who can help with her care as well." "I have experience with children," Ruby offered. "I used to babysit throughout high school." He nodded once. "There's one more thing." Ruby waited, tension building in her chest. "I have business associates arriving next week. For security reasons, it would be beneficial if they believed I was married." Ruby blinked, not sure she understood. "Sir, I need someone to pose as my wife for 1 week, after which you can remain as my housekeeper with a substantial bonus or leave with enough money to cover your first year of nursing school." Ruby stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to pretend to be your wife?" "It's a simple arrangement. You'll attend a few dinners, be seen around the house with my daughter, and maintain the illusion for 7 days. Ruby's mind raced. This had to be a joke. "Why me? You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." He returned to his desk, pulling out a folder she hadn't noticed before. "Ruby Foster, 24 years old. Parents deceased. No siblings. Currently 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction. Applied to 17 jobs in the past 2 weeks. The color drained from her face. "How do you—" "I have resources." He closed the folder. "Your circumstances make you ideal. You need money, and I need discretion. The question is, Miss Foster, are you interested?" Every instinct told Ruby to run. This man was dangerous, powerful in ways she couldn't begin to understand. But the reality of her situation crashed down on her. Eviction, no home, no prospects. What exactly would this entail? "You'll move in today. I'll provide suitable clothing and all necessities. You'll meet my daughter, Sophia, and begin building rapport with her. When my associates arrive, you'll play the role of devoted wife and mother. Nothing inappropriate will be required of you." Ruby's fingers twisted in her lap. "And after the week is over, as I said, stay on as housekeeper or leave with enough money for your education. Why do these business associates need to think you're married?" His jaw tightened. "That's not your concern." Ruby took a deep breath. "I'd need something in writing, a contract." A hint of a smile touched his lips. Cautious. "Good." He opened a drawer and pulled out a document. "I anticipated your request." The contract was surprisingly straightforward. 1 week of pretending to be Mrs. Dominic Rossi. No physical intimacy required. Complete confidentiality. And the payment? Ruby nearly gasped at the figure. "This is a lot of money. I value my privacy. And my daughter's safety." That caught her attention. "Is Sophia in danger?" Something dark passed over his face. "Just sign the contract, Ms. Foster." Ruby hesitated, pen hovering over the signature line. This was madness. She didn't know this man, didn't know what he did or why he needed this charade, but she did know what waited for her outside these gates. Homelessness, desperation. She signed. Dominic Rossi took the contract, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Rossi." Ruby stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing herself. Gone were her worn jeans and faded t-shirt. replaced by an elegant cream silk blouse and tailored black trousers that fit as if made for her. Less than 24 hours after signing Dominic Rossi's contract, her new closet was filled with designer clothing in exactly her size. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Mrs. Hayes entered, her perpetual frown slightly less severe today. "Mr. Rossi requests your presence in the garden. It's time you met Sophia." Ruby nodded, anxiety fluttering in her stomach. Meeting Dominic's daughter made this bizarre arrangement feel more real and more deceptive. The garden was a paradise of perfectly landscaped greenery, flowering trees, and a stone pathway leading to a gazebo where Dominic stood watching a small girl chasing butterflies. The sight was so incongruous with his intimidating presence that Ruby paused, taking in the unexpected scene. Dominic turned, sensing her arrival. He wore casual clothes today, dark jeans, and a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms and what appeared to be a small tattoo near his wrist. Even dressed down, he exuded authority. "Sophia," he called gently, "come meet someone." The little girl turned, and Ruby's heart melted. She was beautiful, with her father's dark hair but softer features and bright, intelligent eyes. She approached cautiously, half hiding behind her father's leg. "Sophia, this is Ruby. She's going to be staying with us." Ruby knelt to the child's level, smiling warmly. "Hello, Sophia. It's very nice to meet you." Sophia studied her with surprising intensity for a 5-year-old. "Are you my new nanny?" Ruby glanced up at Dominic, unsure how to answer. "Ruby is going to be helping take care of you," Dominic explained, his hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. "But she's also going to be a special friend to both of us." Sophia's brow furrowed. "What kind of special friend?" Dominic knelt beside his daughter, his voice gentle in a way Ruby hadn't heard before. "Remember how I told you some people might be visiting soon, and that we need to be extra careful?" Sophia nodded solemnly. "Ruby is going to help us with that. She's going to pretend to be your stepmother while they're here." Ruby held her breath, waiting for the child's reaction. Sophia looked at Ruby with renewed interest. "Like make-believe?" "Exactly," Ruby replied, relieved by the simple explanation. "Just like make-believe." Sophia seemed to consider this for a moment before asking, "Do you know how to make butterfly cookies? Lucia used to make them, but she left." "I've never made butterfly cookies before," Ruby admitted, "but I'd love to learn how with you." Sophia's face brightened. "Can we, Papa?" Dominic's expression softened as he looked at his daughter. "Of course, Tesoro." As Sophia skipped ahead toward the house, chattering about cookies and frosting colors, Dominic turned to Ruby. "She likes you," he observed, surprise evident in his tone. "She seems like a wonderful child," Ruby replied honestly. "She is." Pride and something deeper, vulnerability perhaps, flickered across his face. "Sophia is everything to me." The raw emotion in his voice caught Ruby off guard. This was not the cold, calculating businessman who had proposed their arrangement yesterday. They walked in silence back toward the house until Ruby gathered the courage to ask the question that had been bothering her since their first meeting. "Why this charade, Mr. Rossi? Why does your daughter need protection?" His jaw tensed. "I told you that's not your concern. If I'm going to pretend to be her stepmother, I think it is my concern." Dominic stopped, turning to face her with narrowed eyes. "You signed a contract to play a role, Ms. Foster, not to question my motives." Ruby stood her ground. "I'm not asking for business secrets, I'm asking about Sophia's safety. If there's a threat, I need to know what to watch for." For a moment she thought he might dismiss her entirely. Instead he glanced around to ensure they were alone. "The men visiting next week are associates of the Vitale family," he said, his voice low. "They believe I have something that belongs to them. They've made subtle threats against Sophia." Ruby couldn't hide her horror. "Not directly, but Enrico Vitale lost his only son last year in an unfortunate accident. He blames me." Dominic's eyes hardened. "A married man with a stable family life appears less threatening than a single father. It's a matter of perception. And these men, they're dangerous. Very." His gaze held hers. "Which is why this arrangement must be convincing. Sophia's safety depends on it." The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Ruby's shoulders. "I understand." For the next 2 hours, Ruby lost herself in the simple joy of baking with Sophia. The child was bright and talkative, sharing stories about her school and friends, as they cut cookie dough into butterfly shapes. Ruby found herself genuinely enjoying Sophia's company, almost forgetting the circumstances that had brought them together. That evening, after helping Sophia with her bath and reading her a bedtime story, Ruby returned to her own suite, emotionally exhausted. She was just about to change for bed when a knock came at her door. Dominic stood in the hallway, his tie loosened and a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "May I come in?" Ruby hesitated before stepping aside. He entered, surveying her quarters with a critical eye. "Is everything satisfactory?" "More than satisfactory," Ruby admitted. "The room is beautiful." He nodded, seeming pleased. "Sophia hasn't stopped talking about you. She's a wonderful child." "Yes." He took a sip from his glass. "I didn't expect her to warm to you so quickly. Her last nanny was with us for nearly a year, and Sophia never made her butterfly cookies." Ruby smiled slightly. "Children have good instincts. Better than adults sometimes." Dominic set his glass down on a nearby table. "I owe you an apology for my behavior in the garden. Your questions about Sophia's safety were legitimate." The admission surprised Ruby. "Thank you. You should know what you're getting into." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare display of unease. "The men arriving next week believe I'm responsible for the death of Enrico Vitale's son." "Are you?" The question slipped out before Ruby could stop it. Dominic's expression darkened. Marco Vitale was a liability to his own father. His habits were destructive. I warned Enrico multiple times, but he refused to control his son. "What happened to him?" "Overdose. At one of my properties, unfortunately. Enrico believes I supplied the drugs, but his son brought his own poison to my door." Dominic's jaw tightened. Now Enrico wants retribution. An eye for an eye. Cold dread washed over Ruby as understanding dawned. "Sophia." He would never say it explicitly, but the threat is clear. Dominic's eyes met hers, and for the first time Ruby saw genuine fear there. "That's why this charade is necessary. Enrico respects family above all else. If he believes Sophia has a mother figure, a complete family, he may reconsider. And if he doesn't," Dominic's expression turned deadly, "then other measures will be taken. But I'd prefer to avoid that outcome." Ruby wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm evening. "What exactly do you do, Mr. Rossi?" A bitter smile touched his lips. "Officially, I'm a businessman with interests in real estate, shipping, and private security. And unofficially, I protect what's mine." His gaze intensified. "Like Sophia, like this household. And now me?" Ruby asked quietly. "You're under my protection for as long as you're here," he confirmed. "No harm will come to you, Ruby. You have my word." Coming from most men, the promise would have seemed hollow, but from Dominic Rossi, with his power and resources, it carried weight. "Our guests arrive Monday," he continued, moving toward the door. "That gives us 3 days to make this arrangement convincing. Starting tomorrow, you'll need to be seen publicly as my wife. We'll have lunch at my usual restaurant, visit the park where Sophia plays. Small gestures of familiarity will be necessary." Ruby nodded, understanding the implication. Hand-holding, standing close, that sort of thing. "Yes, nothing inappropriate." He paused at the door. "Sophia usually wakes at 7. She'd like you to have breakfast with us. I'll be there." As he turned to leave, Ruby found herself calling after him. "Mr. Rossi?" He looked back, eyebrow raised. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Good night, Ruby." Bellini's turned out to be an exclusive Italian restaurant, where Dominic was clearly a regular. The maitre d' greeted him by name, leading them to a prime table where they could see and be seen by the other wealthy patrons. "Mr. Rossi, so good to see you again," the man said with a deferential bow. "And the beautiful Sophia, of course." His eyes landed on Ruby with undisguised curiosity. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure." Dominic placed his hand over Ruby's on the table, the gesture casual but possessive. "This is my wife, Ruby." The maitre d's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "I had no idea you had married, sir. Congratulations." "Thank you, Antonio. We kept it private." "For Sophia's sake." Of course, of course." The man beamed at Ruby. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Rossi. Anything you desire today is on the house." Throughout lunch, Dominic played the attentive husband perfectly, filling Ruby's wine glass, asking her opinion on menu items and occasionally touching her arm or hand. To an observer, they looked like any wealthy, attractive couple enjoying a family meal with their daughter. As they were finishing their meal, A tall man in an expensive suit approached their table. Dominic's posture instantly stiffened, though his expression remained pleasantly neutral. "Dominic," the man greeted, his accent distinctly Italian. "What a surprise." "Carlo." Dominic inclined his head slightly. "I wasn't aware you frequented Bellini's." "First time," Carlo replied, his gaze shifting to Ruby with open interest. "And who is this enchanting creature?" "My wife Ruby," Dominic said, his voice carrying a subtle warning. "Ruby, this is Carlo Vitale, Enrico's nephew." Ruby's pulse quickened at the name. Vitale. The family threatening Sofia. She extended her hand with a calmness she didn't feel. "Pleasure to meet you." Carlo took her hand, holding it longer than necessary. "The pleasure is entirely mine. I had no idea Dominic had married. How unexpected." "We value our privacy," Ruby replied, gently extracting her hand and placing it protectively on Sofia's shoulder. Carlo's eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed, my uncle will be very interested to hear about this development. Give Enrico my regards," Dominic said, his tone deceptively casual. As soon as he was out of earshot, Dominic signaled for the check. "We're leaving. Now." In the car, with Sofia safely buckled in the back seat, with headphones watching a movie on a tablet, Dominic's carefully controlled facade cracked. "Damn it," he muttered, knuckles white on the steering wheel. That was no coincidence. "He's one of the men coming on Monday?" Ruby asked quietly. "No. Carlo is Enrico's errand boy, nothing more." Dominic glanced in the rearview mirror to ensure Sofia was distracted, but he'll report back immediately. This changes things. "How?" "He'll be suspicious. The timing of our supposed marriage." Fear coiled in Ruby's stomach. "What does that mean for us, for Sofia?" Dominic was silent for a long moment, calculating. "It means we need to be more convincing. There can be no doubt that you are my wife and Sofia's stepmother." That night, Dominic came to Ruby's room with a small velvet box. "I thought of something else we need for authenticity," he said, extending the box toward her. Inside was a stunning diamond ring, elegant and understated, despite the obviously high-quality stone. "A wedding ring," Ruby breathed. "It would be suspicious if my wife didn't wear one." He removed the ring from the box. "May I?" Ruby extended her left hand, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach as Dominic slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, which didn't surprise her. Dominic Rossi seemed to ensure everything in his world was perfect. "It's beautiful," she said, admiring how the diamond caught the light. "It was my mother's," he replied quietly. Ruby's eyes snapped to his. "I can't wear your mother's ring." "You can, and you will." His tone brooked no argument, but then softened. "It's been in a safe for years. She would approve of it being used to protect Sofia." Ruby nodded slowly, understanding the significance. "Thank you for trusting me with it." Dominic's gaze lingered on her hand, now adorned with his family ring. "It suits you," he said, echoing his earlier comment about the necklace. Before Ruby could respond, he stepped closer, one hand coming up to gently touch her cheek. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. "For the next week," he said softly, "we need to be comfortable with each other, may I?" Understanding what he was asking, Ruby nodded, her heart pounding against her ribs. Dominic leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his lips brushed against hers in the lightest of kisses. Though barely a touch, electricity shot through Ruby's body, making her gasp. He pulled back, studying her reaction with those intense dark eyes. "Was that okay?" Unable to find her voice, Ruby nodded. "Good." His thumb brushed her lower lip gently. "Practice. For authenticity." With that, he turned and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Ruby stood frozen in place, fingers touching her lips where the warmth of his still lingered. "Practice," he'd said, "for authenticity," but the racing of her heart felt dangerously authentic already. The grand dining room of the Rossi mansion gleamed with polished silver and crystal under the light of an antique chandelier. Ruby sat at Dominic's right hand, Sofia beside her, as Mrs. Hayes directed staff in serving the elaborate Sunday dinner. Tomorrow the Vitale delegation would arrive, and this was, in Dominic's words, the final dress rehearsal. 4 days into their arrangement, Ruby was surprised by how naturally she had fallen into the role of Mrs. Rossi. The ring on her finger now felt like it belonged there. The routine of family breakfasts and bedtime stories with Sofia had become second nature. Even the casual touches she and Dominic exchanged, a hand at the small of her back, fingers interlaced while walking. The occasional kiss on her cheek no longer felt forced or awkward. What troubled Ruby was how much she was beginning to enjoy it. Dominic's phone buzzed with a message. He checked it discreetly, his expression hardening. "Excuse me," he said, rising from the table. "I need to take this. Sophia, finish your dinner. Ruby, may I have a word when you're done?" Ruby nodded, concern rising at his sudden change in demeanor. After ensuring Mrs. Hayes would oversee Sophia's bedtime routine, Ruby made her way to Dominic's study. The door was ajar, and she could hear him speaking in rapid Italian, his voice tense and commanding. When his voice finally fell silent, Ruby knocked softly on the door. "Enter," he called, his tone clipped. She found him standing by the window, tension evident in the rigid set of his shoulders. "Is everything okay?" she asked, closing the door behind her. "No." He turned to face her, expression grim. "Plans have changed. The Vitales are arriving tonight, not tomorrow." Ruby's stomach dropped. "Tonight? How soon?" "2 hours." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare display of agitation. "They claim it's a scheduling issue, but it's a power play. They want to catch us unprepared." "Are we?" Ruby asked. "Unprepared?" Dominic's eyes met hers. "The staff has been briefed. Security is in place." He paused. "The question is, are you ready?" Ruby took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Yes, I can do this." Relief flickered across his face. "Good. Sophia will be asleep before they arrive, but they'll expect to meet her tomorrow." An hour later, Ruby stood before her bedroom mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The dress Dominic had sent up was a deep burgundy, elegant and sophisticated, with its fitted bodice and flowing skirt. Her hair was styled in soft waves, and the diamond earrings that had appeared along with the dress sparkled with every movement. A knock at her door revealed Dominic, resplendent in a black suit that emphasized his powerful build. He paused when he saw her, genuine appreciation in his gaze. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." Ruby smoothed the silk of her dress nervously. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up." "You look like you were born to wear that dress." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The men who entered the foyer moved with the confidence of those accustomed to power. In the lead was an older man with silver hair and cold eyes that immediately found and assessed Ruby. "Enrico," Dominic greeted, his voice betraying none of the tension Ruby knew he felt. "This is unexpected. We weren't prepared for guests this evening." "Forgive the intrusion," Enrico Vitale replied, his accent thicker than his nephew's had been. "Business in the city concluded early." His gaze remained fixed on Ruby. "And who is this vision?" Dominic placed his arm around Ruby's waist, drawing her close to his side. "My wife, Ruby. Tesoro, this is Enrico Vitale." Ruby extended her hand with a gracious smile. "Mr. Vitale, welcome to our home." Enrico took her hand, studying her face intently. "My nephew mentioned Dominic had married. I must say I was surprised. Dominic has always valued his independence." "Things change," Dominic replied smoothly. "The right woman makes all the difference." "Indeed." Enrico finally released Ruby's hand. "And when exactly did this fortunate meeting occur?" Ruby felt Dominic tense beside her, but answered before he could. "We met at the Children's Hospital fundraiser last summer. I was volunteering with the event planning." "On a charitable heart." Enrico's smile didn't reach his eyes. "And when did you marry?" 3 months ago," Dominic interjected. "A private ceremony." Enrico raised an eyebrow. "So private that even business associates knew nothing of it. As I said, we value our privacy." Dominic gestured toward the sitting room. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. I'll have drinks served." As the evening progressed, Ruby played her part perfectly, offering refreshments, contributing occasionally to the discussion, and exuding the quiet confidence of a woman secure in her position as the wife of a powerful man. She made sure their every touch, every exchanged glance appeared natural and affectionate. To everyone's surprise, Enrico announced his early departure later that day. "Our business here is concluded more quickly than anticipated. We'll be leaving this afternoon." Dominic maintained his neutral expression, though Ruby could sense his confusion. "So soon?" "I've seen what I needed to see," Enrico replied cryptically, his gaze shifting to Ruby. "Family changes a man's priorities. I understand that now." As they stood on the front steps watching Enrico's entourage drive away, Ruby felt Dominic's tension finally release. "It's over," he murmured, his arm around her waist. "They're gone." "Is it really that simple?" Ruby asked. unable to believe their ordeal had ended so abruptly. Enrico came here looking for weakness, for proof that I was vulnerable. Instead, he found a united family. He squeezed her fingers gently. Thanks to you. So, Sophia is safe now? Yes. Relief and gratitude shone in his eyes. The threat has passed. They stood there for a long moment, neither speaking, both aware that with the danger gone, their arrangement had reached its natural conclusion. The realization brought an unexpected ache to Ruby's chest. I should start packing, she said finally, slipping her hands from his. Our agreement was for 1 week, but since the threat is over— Ruby, Dominic interrupted, his voice tight. We need to talk about that. But before he could continue, Sophia came running out the front door, flinging herself at Ruby's legs. Can we make those lion cookies now? You promised. Ruby looked down at Sophia's hopeful face, then back at Dominic. Whatever he had been about to say would have to wait. Of course we can, sweetheart, she said, forcing a smile. Let's go find the chef. As she led Sophia inside, Ruby couldn't help feeling that she was walking toward a goodbye she wasn't ready to face. 3 months later, Ruby adjusted her white coat and stethoscope, still getting used to her new uniform. The nursing program was everything she'd hoped for, challenging, fulfilling, and finally within reach thanks to Dominic's generosity. True to his word, he had funded her education fully, despite her early departure from their arrangement. The goodbye had been difficult. Sophia's tears, Dominic's stoic silence, the empty feeling in Ruby's chest as she'd packed her few belongings. She'd left the ring and necklace behind, of course. They were never truly hers to keep. Ruby checked her watch and hurried toward the pediatric ward for her clinical rotation. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with a tall figure in a familiar, expensive suit. "Dominic," she gasped, her heart leaping at the sight of him. He looked just as she remembered, powerful, handsome, his dark eyes intense as they locked with hers. "Ruby," he said, her name a caress on his lips. "I was hoping I'd find you here. How did you know where I'd be?" A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "I have resources, remember?" "Is Sophia okay?" Ruby asked, sudden concern gripping her. "She's fine, she misses you." He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "We both do." Ruby's pulse quickened. "Dominic, why are you here?" He moved closer, his voice low. "The week you spent with us, it changed things. Changed me." His eyes held hers. "I told myself it was just an arrangement, that once the threat passed we would return to our separate lives. But, Ruby prompted when he fell silent, "But Sophia cries for you at night. The house feels empty without your laughter. And he took a deep breath. "I find myself missing my wife." Ruby's breath caught in her throat. "I wasn't really your wife." "You could be." He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box, not the one that had held his mother's ring, but a new one. This time, not for pretend, not for a week, for real, forever. Ruby stared at the box, her mind spinning. "Dominic, you barely know me." "I know enough," he said, echoing words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "I know you're kind and brave. I know Sophia adores you. I know you light up rooms just by entering them." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring, not his mother's, but one clearly chosen specifically for her. "And I know that every day since you left, I've regretted letting you go." Ruby's eyes filled with tears. "What about your world? The danger, the business associates? I'm just a nursing student. You're everything we need." He took her hand gently. "My world is changing. Has changed. Some businesses sold, others restructured. All legal now, above board." His eyes held hers. "For Sophia, and for you, if you'll have me." Ruby looked at the ring, then back at the man who had crashed into her life and turned it upside down. "This is crazy." "Most worthwhile things are," he replied. "Yes," she whispered, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time." Dominic's smile was blinding as he slipped the ring onto her finger, where his mother's ring had once rested in pretend. This one would stay in truth. "Just 1 week," he murmured, drawing her into his arms. "That's all it took to change everything." This story has come to its end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave a like and share it with someone who enjoys emotional stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.